I couldn't breathe. The hallway floor was ice cold against my cheek as darkness closed in at the edges of my vision. My lips tingled, then went numb, turning that terrifying shade of blue I'd only ever seen in textbooks. Downstairs, Amazing Grace drifted up through the floorboards, my mother-in-law humming, calm and steady, as she stirred her morning coffee. Like she'd been expecting this moment all along. Behind closed doors, she'd already convinced everyone, even my husband, that I was just being dramatic. Hidden in our junk drawer was a letter that could shatter her perfect grandmother mask forever. A warning from another victim. A message she almost buried with me. Because I wasn't her first. And in her twisted mind, she'd already rehearsed what she'd say at my funeral. I'm Olivia Hayes. This is the story of how my mother-in-law's psychological torture nearly killed me, and how one intercepted letter destroyed her completely. The delivery room had felt like heaven just 4 days earlier. For 18 hours, we were the happiest family alive. But perfect moments don't last. Not with Diane watching from the shadows, already calculating her next move. By the next morning, something shifted deep inside my chest. Invisible hands seemed to squeeze my lungs tighter with every breath. Each inhale scraped raw, like dragging air through barbed wire. The air felt thick, suffocating, like trying to breathe through wet concrete. I told myself it was just exhaustion. New mom nerves. But a darker voice inside whispered this wasn't normal. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, screen lighting up with texts and calls. Messages I never saw. Diane had claimed it within hours, fingers moving with practiced ease. You need proper rest, sweetheart. Let me handle all the outside noise. What I didn't realize was that she was erasing lifelines, deleting every message, every voicemail, every attempt from friends and family to reach me. Tyler's mother swept through our front door with 3 suitcases and terrifying confidence. At 62, she commanded every room she entered, silver hair styled with military precision, voice dripping with authority that made you second-guess your own thoughts. The transformation was swift. Camden's bassinet relocated, so she could monitor him constantly, angled just right from her new command post at the kitchen table. My medications misplaced during her helpful reorganization, scattered to the far corners of the house. My breast pump banished to a corner outlet that barely worked. Each change came with a reasonable excuse, delivered in that honeyed tone. Better lighting for the baby here. These pills were cluttering your counter, dear. But the house itself began to betray her. The hallway reeked of bleach mixed with Diane's lavender perfume, a sterile sweetness that clung to the walls, seeping into everything like invisible poison. Some women handle motherhood naturally, dear. Others need guidance to overcome their dramatic tendencies. That pause before dramatic was calculated. The way her pale blue eyes studied my face afterward, cataloging every flinch, every tear, every weakness, felt like she was filing it away for later use. She'd said those words before. With Rachel. Right before Rachel nearly died. And upstairs, hidden behind old tax papers in our junk drawer, was a letter I hadn't seen. A desperate warning Diane had stolen from our mailbox. One that might have saved me. By the next evening, stairs felt like mountains. Tyler found me halfway up, gripping the banister with white knuckles, gasping like I'd run a marathon. Something's wrong. I wheezed, my words coming out in broken fragments. This isn't normal tiredness. My chest, it feels like someone's standing on it. Diane appeared with supernatural timing, materializing in the hallway like she'd been waiting just out of sight. Oh, sweetheart, every new mother goes through this phase. Your body just needs more time to build resilience. Tyler's worried expression melted into relief as he watched his mother's composed certainty replace my panicked breathing, trembling hands, obvious inability to handle normal motherhood. Meanwhile, downstairs, Diane rewrote reality with Oscar-worthy performances, her voice carrying just the right mixture of concern and exasperation. Megan, a registered nurse and Tyler's sister, called 6 times that day alone. Each time, Diane answered with perfectly crafted lies delivered in increasingly irritated tones. They're doing wonderfully. Just normal adjustment issues, though some people handle change better than others. Hours later, Tyler heard a different version. Your sister called again, quite worked up about nothing. She seems determined to create problems where none exist. You know how dramatic medical people can be. What Tyler didn't see was Diane's satisfied smile as she hung up, or the way she immediately blocked Megan's number from her home phone. Chess pieces on a board. That's all we were to her. But the most chilling detail? Later, when investigators reviewed our phone records, they discovered she'd been taking detailed notes during every call, documenting exactly what symptoms family members were asking about, so she could craft more convincing lies about my improvement. That evening brought Jessica, my closest friend since college, carrying coffee and concern etched deep in her face. She took one look at me slumped on the couch and went pale. Jesus, Olivia. You look terrible. Hospital-level terrible. Your color is all wrong. Diane glided in from the kitchen with supernatural timing, tea towel draped over her arm like a prop. Poor circulation from exhaustion. Some mothers adjust to sleep deprivation better than others. It's really quite common. Jessica pulled out her phone, fingers hovering over the emergency contacts. Maybe I should call 911. Those symptoms you described earlier sound serious. Oh goodness, no. Diane interrupted, her voice taking on a sharper edge beneath the sweetness. That would create unnecessary anxiety for everyone. Emergency rooms can't fix normal growing pains. They'd just send her home with a hefty bill and tell her what I'm telling her. Some women need more time to adjust. I watched Jessica's face change in real time, doubt creeping in as Diane's authoritative tone worked its magic. The confidence of a woman who'd spent decades in healthcare settings, who knew exactly what words would make someone question their own instincts. After Jessica left, confused but somehow convinced she was overreacting, Diane's mask slipped for just a moment. Something cold and calculating flashed in her eyes as she watched me struggle to breathe. Your friends worry too much, she said, but there was satisfaction in her voice. Good thing someone here has experience with what real medical emergencies actually look like. I was drowning in plain sight, and she was systematically cutting every rope that might pull me to safety. What I later learned was even more horrifying. She'd been keeping a journal of my symptoms, not to track my health, but to perfect her cover story for when I inevitably collapsed. Saturday morning shattered my remaining hope with the shrill ring of our landline. Olivia, are you experiencing chest discomfort? Megan's voice carried sharp nursing urgency, the tone she used in the ICU when seconds mattered. A little pressure, but Diane says, stop. Listen to me. You sound like you're in respiratory distress. These symptoms after delivery can be life-threatening. Pulmonary embolism, cardiomyopathy, infection. You need help now. Tyler took the phone with that patronizing expression spreading across his face, the one that meant he was about to mansplain something to a medical professional. Mom's helping us understand this is normal postpartum anxiety. Women's bodies go through a lot of changes. When I wrestled the phone back with shaking hands, Megan was breaking. Olivia, listen to me. Chest pressure, shortness of breath, fatigue after childbirth can kill you. Get help immediately, or I'm driving down there right now. Diane's whisper cut through the silence like a blade. You're frightening your sister unnecessarily, dear. She ended the call with a soft click, her finger moving to the power button with deliberate finality. 4 hours later, Megan was driving toward us at 90 miles per hour, her nursing instincts overriding every traffic law. She never made it past our porch. But what none of us knew was that hidden in our junk drawer, beneath old warranties and takeout menus, was Rachel's letter. The one piece of evidence that could have instantly shattered Diane's facade and saved my life. From our upstairs window, I watched my last hope die on our front driveway. Megan gestured frantically at Tyler and Diane, her scrubs still bearing coffee stains from the emergency drive down. She has classic signs of serious postpartum complications. Shortness of breath, chest pressure, fatigue. This could be life-threatening. Tyler stood beside his mother, car keys in hand but frozen, his face cycling between concern for me and trust in his mother's medical authority. It's anxiety presenting as physical symptoms. Mom explained how stress can mimic real illness. Diane placed her hand on Tyler's arm with calculated gentleness, and I watched the keys disappear into his pocket. Some women use medical concerns for attention when overwhelmed by motherhood. It's more common than people realize. Tyler, as a medical professional, I'm telling you your wife needs help now. Today. This minute. She's just struggling more than most, Diane replied with poisonous certainty, her voice carrying the weight of decades in healthcare volunteering. She needs guidance and support, not doctors enabling dramatic responses to normal challenges. The most chilling part was watching Diane's face during this exchange. While Tyler looked torn and Megan looked desperate, Diane looked satisfied. There was something in her expression that reminded me of a cat playing with a wounded mouse. I watched my sister-in-law drive away in tears, her brake lights disappearing around the corner. Diane stood victorious in our driveway, already planning her next move. Unknown to all of us, a letter was buried in our junk drawer, waiting to expose the monster in our house. A letter that would reveal this wasn't random cruelty. It was a calculated pattern that had nearly killed before. Sunday night, 3 a.m. I woke up truly dying. The sensation was unlike anything I'd experienced, not just struggling to breathe, but actively drowning while lying in bed. Each attempt at breathing felt like trying to suck air through a straw getting smaller by the minute, my lungs burning with the effort. I stumbled to the bathroom, legs shaking like a newborn colt's. The mirror showed me my own death approaching. My lips had turned that deep, terrifying blue that meant your body was shutting down, the color of medical textbooks, the color that sends nurses running. Somehow, with the last reserves of strength in my failing body, I gripped Tyler's shoulder hard enough to wake him. Hospital. I gasped with the final air in my lungs.
Now.
Please. Like she'd been waiting in shadows for this exact moment, Diane appeared in our doorway. Still in her perfectly pressed nightgown, not a hair out of place, as if she'd been lying awake listening for this moment. Classic hyperventilation response, she said with tired patience, like a teacher explaining basic math to a slow student. Look at that breathing pattern, textbook panic behavior. She studied my blue lips with detached interest, the way someone might examine a specimen under glass. Some mothers struggle more with the psychological demands of new parenthood. All this medical drama is attention-seeking behavior. What she needs is firm guidance and support, not hospitals enabling these theatrics. Tyler looked between his wife, gasping, blue-lipped, collapsing, and his mother's supreme confidence. In that moment, I watched him make a choice that nearly killed me. Maybe we should try some calming techniques first? Deep breathing exercises. That's when my body gave up completely. My legs buckled, and I collapsed onto our bedroom floor, hardwood cold against my cheek as darkness crept in from all sides like spilled ink. Even as consciousness slipped away, I could hear Diane's satisfied voice floating above me. See? Pure manipulation. She'll be fine once she stops getting attention for it. What I learned later was that she stood there for a full 30 seconds, watching me turn blue on our bedroom floor, before she casually mentioned that maybe we should check her pulse. The next memories come in fragments, like scenes from a movie played out of sequence. Tyler screams when he couldn't wake me up, his voice cracking as he called 911. The wailing of sirens piercing our quiet suburban night. His sobbing apologies echoing through sterile hospital corridors. Massive bilateral pulmonary embolism, the ER doctor explained to Tyler, his face grim with professional concern. Multiple blood clots in both lungs. Her oxygen saturation was dangerously low when she arrived. I surfaced to the sound of machines keeping me alive, the steady beep of monitors, the mechanical whoosh of oxygen being forced into my damaged lungs, and a doctor's face explaining that massive complications had nearly stopped my heart completely. Another hour without treatment, and you'd be planning a funeral instead of a recovery. Pulmonary embolism is one of the leading causes of maternal mortality. The symptoms she described, if someone had brought her in earlier. Behind closed doors, while machines breathed for me and Tyler processed how close he'd come to losing his wife, he went home in shock to pack a hospital bag. He was digging through our junk drawer, looking for my insurance cards, when his fingers brushed against an envelope that would change everything. Unopened. Addressed to him in careful, desperate handwriting. Return address: Rachel Thompson. His brother Connor's wife. Tyler's hands began shaking as he realized why we'd stopped receiving mail for 3 weeks. Diane had been helping by collecting it, sorting through every piece of correspondence before we saw it. With trembling fingers, he tore open Rachel's letter and read the words that finally shattered his reality. Tyler, I can't stay silent anymore. Your mother nearly destroyed me last year, and I'm terrified she's doing the same thing to Olivia. After Mason's birth, I developed serious complications. High fever, severe abdominal pain, couldn't hold down food or water. Classic signs of postpartum infection that kills women every day. Every time I begged Connor for help, your mother was there with reasonable explanations. She's just struggling more than most. New mothers always think every little discomfort is a crisis. She just needs to build up some resilience instead of running to doctors over every little thing. For 3 days, I got sicker while she convinced Connor I was faking everything for attention. I finally collapsed unconscious in our kitchen while she stood over me explaining to the paramedics how some women use medical crises to manipulate their husbands. The doctors said I had sepsis, blood poisoning that was shutting down my organs. 6 more hours would have killed me. When Connor told your mother what the doctors said about how close I'd come to dying, she just shrugged and said, well, maybe she learned something about the difference between real problems and female dramatics. Tyler, she wants us to suffer. We're threats to her control over you boys. She intercepts mail, blocks phone calls, deletes messages. And watch her face the next time Olivia is in pain. I promise you'll see satisfaction, not concern. I found evidence she'd been keeping notes about my symptoms, not to help, but to make her stories more convincing. She documented everything to perfect her manipulation. I'm mailing this to 3 different addresses because I know she intercepts mail. She's done this before, and she'll do it again. Don't let her kill your wife like she almost killed me. Please. Before it's too late. Rachel. Tyler sat in our quiet kitchen, the letter trembling in his hands, finally understanding the horrifying scope of what he'd enabled. This was Diane's second systematic attempt at destruction, and she'd intercepted the warning that could have saved my life 3 weeks ago. Tyler stormed back to the hospital and cornered my doctor in the ICU hallway. Did anyone try to contact us about my wife before tonight? The doctor's expression darkened, his jaw tightening with barely contained anger. We called multiple times. Someone claiming to be your mother-in-law answered every call, telling us to stop enabling her attention-seeking behavior and that we were making things worse by encouraging her dramatics. Tyler gripped the doorframe, knuckles white. What exactly did you tell her? That your wife's symptoms were potentially life-threatening without immediate intervention. The doctor's voice filled with disgust. She laughed, actually laughed, and said maybe this would teach her to stop being so needy and dependent. The truth hit Tyler like a physical blow. His mother had been explicitly told I could die, and she'd actively chosen my death over losing control. Doctor. Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. What would have happened if someone had brought her in when you first called? She'd have been treated immediately. Full recovery, no complications. We could have prevented all of this. Tyler realized he was looking at attempted murder disguised as family concern. When I was coherent enough to process what happened, Tyler read Rachel's letter through tears, his voice breaking on every word. Even through the oxygen mask, pure rage cut through the morphine haze. This woman had systematically tortured me while wearing the mask of a caring grandmother. She'd watched me turn blue and felt satisfied. She's done this before, I whispered, each word an effort. Rachel almost died. I almost died. How many others has she destroyed that we don't know about? The phone calls started immediately. Connor confirmed Rachel's story, adding details that made it even worse. How Diane had volunteered to help with medical decisions during Rachel's crisis, then used that authority to delay care. Ashley revealed years of psychological manipulation she'd been too terrified to report, being dismissed during a miscarriage, ignored during postpartum depression, gaslit about symptoms that later required surgery. The pattern was identical across all victims. Isolate the target during vulnerability, convince the family she's being dramatic, then smile while she suffers. Each time, Diane had positioned herself as the medical authority, using her volunteer experience to sound credible. Within days, we had documented evidence spanning a decade. The hospital launched a formal investigation. Her volunteer positions were immediately suspended pending review. But the confrontation that would end her reign of terror was still approaching, and it would be more devastating than any of us imagined. Mrs. Thompson, the hospital ethics administrator, began, his file thick with evidence, photographs, and witness statements. You stand accused of actively preventing appropriate medical care after being explicitly informed of life-threatening consequences. Diane launched into the performance of her lifetime, tears flowing perfectly on cue, hands clasped in wounded innocence, voice trembling with just the right amount of hurt confusion. I was simply trying to help young mothers understand normal postpartum experiences. Sometimes women need gentle guidance to distinguish between typical adjustment challenges and actual medical concerns. I've been volunteering in healthcare for 20 years. The administrator's voice turned arctic. Mrs. Thompson, multiple medical professionals have documented that you were explicitly informed your daughter-in-law's symptoms were potentially fatal without immediate intervention. The board members, doctors, nurses, patient advocates, looked at her with barely concealed revulsion. For the first time since I'd known her, Diane's perfect composure began to crack. The mask was slipping, revealing something ugly underneath. "Those women just don't have the strength we had in our generation," she said, her honeyed voice losing its sweet tone and taking on something sharper, more vicious. "They run to doctors over every little discomfort instead of building character through adversity." Mrs. Thompson, are you saying you deliberately prevented medical care? I'm saying some people need to learn the difference between real problems and dramatic attention-seeking. Her voice was rising now, the careful control fraying at the edges. The room went dead silent. She'd just confessed to deliberate medical interference in front of witnesses, with recording equipment running. Years of unchecked control had made her reckless. And she wasn't finished. "I've spent years watching these women manipulate my sons with every little ache and pain. Someone had to teach them that real mothers don't crumble at the first sign of discomfort. By preventing access to potentially life-saving medical care." Her mask shattered completely. By showing them what real strength looks like instead of enabling their pathetic weakness. Every word was being recorded. Every confession was sealing her fate permanently. But the most damaging revelation was yet to come. The ethics board voted unanimously for her permanent removal from all medical activities. Her carefully constructed life collapsed within hours like a house of cards. The church removed her from leadership after reviewing testimony from other women. The senior center terminated her coordinator role when they discovered she'd been counseling vulnerable elderly patients. When the local newspaper ran, "Longtime volunteer under investigation for medical interference," Tyler's extended family finally understood what they'd enabled. Rachel joined our legal case, bringing evidence that turned this from medical negligence into something much darker. The precision of Diane's manipulation was terrifying, targeting daughters-in-law during vulnerability, isolating them from support, convincing husbands their concerns were female dramatics. Her insurance company dropped her coverage after reviewing the case files. Her volunteer work ended permanently. She was blacklisted from healthcare volunteering across 3 states. But the most perfect justice was yet to come. Karma found Diane exactly where she'd left me, desperate for help and systematically dismissed by the very people she'd trained to ignore women's medical concerns. What she'd done to us was about to be done to her, with surgical precision. 6 months later, Diane called Tyler in panic, her voice cracking with genuine fear. "Something's wrong with me. I'm having chest pains and dizziness. I need help." Tyler's voice was calm, almost clinical. "Have you tried relaxation techniques? Deep breathing exercises? Sometimes anxiety can present as physical symptoms. This isn't anxiety. I'm having real problems. Real medical issues. Some people struggle with aging's normal challenges. Maybe this is just typical discomfort presenting as medical drama. You know how stress can make everything feel worse than it actually is. Connor, when she called him, used the same dismissive tone. Mom, you taught us that women tend to exaggerate symptoms. Are you sure this isn't just attention-seeking behavior? Ashley sent her straight to voicemail, then blocked her number entirely. The woman who'd trained her sons to dismiss women's medical concerns was experiencing that dismissal firsthand. The irony was perfect, surgical, beautiful. Why won't anyone believe me? She sobbed to neighbors who'd heard the whole story. I'm having real symptoms, serious problems, but my children think I'm being dramatic just like I said those other women were. The neighbors listened with the same polite indifference she'd once shown my suffering. Diane eventually made it to the hospital, alone, terrified, abandoned by the very family she'd manipulated for decades. Her symptoms were minor hypertension and anxiety, but the isolation had become permanent. The medical staff, who'd heard about her case, treated her with cold professionalism. No warmth, no reassurance, just clinical efficiency. Months later, she appeared on our doorstep like a specter from a nightmare, vibrating with fury and desperation. You've destroyed my entire life, she snarled, all pretense finally gone, her face twisted with hatred. 20 years of community service, my reputation, my family relationships, all because you couldn't handle normal motherhood like a real woman. Tyler stepped protectively in front of me, phone recording, and calmly showed her the evidence: hospital records, recorded calls, testimonies, documented proof of her systematic lies and manipulation. You wanted her to suffer, he said quietly, his voice steady as granite. Fine, she exploded, her composure completely shattered. Maybe if she'd suffer more, she would have developed actual strength. Maybe hardship would have taught her to stop being such a pathetic burden. You wanted her to suffer, Tyler repeated, still recording. That final confession changed everything. Our civil case expanded: psychological manipulation, medical interference, witness tampering, mail fraud, reckless endangerment. Tyler cut contact permanently. Connor moved his family across the country to escape her influence. Ashley changed her last name and relocated to another state, finally free from decades of gaslighting. The woman who'd controlled 3 men through manipulation and fear was left with nothing. No family, no reputation, no community. The medical community had flagged her as dangerous in their databases, ensuring she could never volunteer in healthcare again. Rachel's letter didn't just save my life. It protected every future daughter-in-law from the same systematic torture. We established a support group for medical gaslighting victims. Within months, dozens of women shared identical manipulation stories, creating a network of survivors who could recognize and combat this abuse. I returned to my healthcare policy work with a sacred mission. The Diane Protocol now exists in 17 states, requiring hospitals to maintain direct patient contact regardless of family interference, and mandating that medical professionals document and report suspected cases of deliberate medical obstruction. Tyler and I rebuilt our marriage through intensive therapy, where he confronted how his mother's programming had trained him to dismiss women's medical concerns as emotional manipulation. When we welcomed our daughter Hope last year, everything was different. Tyler took every concern seriously, immediately, without question. He'd learned that believing women's medical concerns isn't weakness, it's survival. Camden is 18 months old now, unaware his grandmother once tortured his mother while humming hymns and planning her funeral speech. Hope thrives in a house where women's voices are believed, heard, and acted upon without question. Diane lives alone across town, permanently severed from the family she destroyed through pathological control. Her health declines in isolation, with no one to care whether her symptoms are real or imagined. Last month brought another health scare. She called Tyler 17 times in one day, increasingly frantic, desperately seeking the medical validation she denied others. He never answered once. She taught me that women's medical concerns are attention-seeking behavior, he told our support group. I'm simply applying her lessons with perfect consistency. I keep Rachel's letter framed in my home office now, not as a reminder of trauma, but as proof that women absolutely must protect each other from people who would rather watch us suffer and die than lose control over the men in our lives. The most dangerous people aren't obvious villains. They're the ones everyone calls saints, the helpful grandmothers, the devoted volunteers, the women who handle everything and keep families together through systematic destruction of anyone who threatens their control. Diane Thompson spent 20 years being praised as the perfect mother-in-law, the tireless volunteer, the grandmother who always knew exactly what to do. Behind that facade was someone who systematically targeted vulnerable women during their weakest moments, after childbirth, during illness, in times of crisis, and smiled with genuine satisfaction while they suffered in silence, gaslit into believing their pain was imaginary. She nearly killed Rachel with her psychological games. She nearly killed me with the same calculated cruelty, watching me turn blue on our bedroom floor with satisfied detachment. If that letter hadn't somehow survived her mail interception system, if Rachel hadn't been desperate enough to mail it to multiple addresses, I would have died in that hallway believing I was weak, overly dramatic, and fundamentally unworthy of help or medical care. But I lived. Rachel lived. And now every woman who comes after us in this family will live too, protected by the truth we fought to expose and the systems we built to prevent future victims. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't just surviving what someone tried to do to you. Sometimes it's making absolutely certain they never get another chance to destroy someone else, while they experience the exact dismissal and isolation they inflicted on others. If someone in your life is dismissing your medical concerns, especially during vulnerable times like after childbirth, surgery, or illness, trust your own body and instincts over their confidence and authority. Your life and well-being are worth fighting for, even when the people who should protect you choose to silence and dismiss you instead. The sweetest-seeming people can hide the most twisted intentions. Diane learned that lesson the night she decided my suffering and potential death didn't matter more than her control. The same night, a hidden letter guaranteed the world would remember her choices forever. Have you ever experienced systematic medical gaslighting from family members? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want more stories about women who refuse to stay silent about life-threatening family betrayal, hit subscribe, because I've got stories that will completely change how you see toxic family dynamics.